Triple Crown winner, a Breeders' Cup winner, a horse of a lifetime.
Hello and welcome to Tournament Talk on the Tournament Edge for Friday, March 11th. I'm Bobby Shoemaker, and of course that's Andrew Calvano. Andrew and I are going to be breaking down 4 races tonight, 2 at Tampa Bay Downs for a very good Tampa Bay Derby card. We've got 1 at Gulfstream Park and 1 more at Santa Anita. Well, Andrew, why don't we start the great race place tonight? It's race 11. It's a $75,000 stakes, 1 mile turf for 3-year-old fillies, a field of 12. And Pacific Heat, the 9 horse, is your 5-2 morning line favorite.
Yeah, and like you said, Pacific Heat, the well-deserving morning line favorite today. First time hitting the turf last out, just crushed the Cal Cup Oaks, $200,000 stakes race for Cal Bred's 3-year-old fillies. And Flavian Pride gets back aboard for Peter Urton, who he's had much success with over the meet. And honestly, I think they do it again. He was an odds-on favorite last time out. I know he's going to be odds-on again, but I'm willing to take that risk because I think he's just going to go to the lead, and he has even had success. She's even had success rating. So if Flavian Pride, who is one of the best turf jockeys in the country right now, if he feels the need that she needs to sit back, then that's how we'll do it. But honestly, I truly think this one's the horse to beat, and I think there's no problem getting her home.
Andrew, I thought there was more speed in this race. I thought that there were some horses that were going from the 6 furlong distance to the mile or the 2 turns. May not necessarily show a lot of speed sprinting, but obviously, you know as well as I do, horses stretching out have a tendency to show more speed when they do that. And I just think Pacific Heat had it all her way the first time on the turf. And from a numbers perspective, visually, it was very impressive. I'd like to see what this horse can do when she's got pressure with her early, and I'm not willing to take 5-2 or lower on a horse that I think is going to have company early, and I'm not sure how good she really is. So to make a long story short, I landed on the 1 horse, Lady Valeur. Now, I'm not a big fan of taking horses in races in which they're facing winners for the first time. But I don't think this is the strongest $75,000 stakes. I don't think Pacific Heat is a world beater. And if you look at this horse's last start, albeit a maiden, jumped off the page. I mean, wins by 5.5. I think, and maybe you agree, could have won by more. It was just went by all of them turning for home, and there was never any doubt. What I like most about the horse is this is his 3rd career start in the United States. The first race was a 6.5 furlong race, which to me was more or less a prep for something going longer, which is what I think this horse wants to do anyway. The horse almost won the race, was steady, almost won by lost by a mile and a quarter. Well, a length and a quarter. Now, Gallagher and the Connections had to be very pleased with that effort. And then they put her in this race, the maiden, and she won like a good thing. So I think this horse has the most talent. I think the upside on this horse is greater by far than anything else in this race. I don't like 5-1. Now, I think the horse should be 7, 8, 9-1, but I do think this horse is a winner, and I know it's late in the tournament for especially the big tournaments that we're actually doing this show for. If you're in position, I think you go with the 1 horse because I think this horse can get it done. The only concern I have, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, I do think this horse is going to have to come from off the pace because Pacific Heat is fast. There's other horses, that are stretching out in distance. The 1 hole at the rail on a turf course that doesn't allow a lot of horses to pass as of late, is that a concern to you? And overall, what are your thoughts on my selection?
Yeah, actually, I had Lady Valeur, or if that's the correct pronunciation. Right. She was actually my 3rd selection in this race, and like you said, her that's 6.5 furlong down the hill was definitely a prep for something bigger, and you could see right away a 5 1/4 length victory in the latest score. And honestly, Could have went more.
Right.
Eased in the middle of the stretch, and she just dominated for Patrick Gallagher. My only problem is taking young horses, going 2 turns on the turf, pinned on the rail in a large field.
I get it.
They're young horses, and all the credit in the world to Gary Stevens, who's a Hall of Fame jockey, but it's going to take a little more, in my opinion, from the rail. But the way I'm looking at this trip, I honestly think she can save ground on the rail and fire late, and that's why I took her third. And for me personally, as a horizontal player, I would definitely not leave this horse off your horizontal tickets. And although Pacific Heat is my top choice and will be many singles to close out this pick 4, I wouldn't suggest singling her just because you have a young filly race going 2 turns on the turf. 12-horse field, you don't really want to take one horse. You want to spread yourself there. So I would definitely use the one. I'm glad you brought her up.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about the talent or lack thereof in this race when a horse first off its maiden score that isn't trained by Chad Brown or Todd Pletcher is going off at 5-1. I think the reason why the 5-1 kind of sticks out to us is because we're not accustomed to that.
Yeah.
But I just don't think this field is that salty. And again, I think Pacific Heat is very beatable. So 5-1 on its face may not look like a good price, but if you get 5-1 on a horse whose last out performance was as good as that one, I think you take it and run with it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, especially horses that, are jumping up and facing winners for the first time after winning these maiden special weights, you have to respect the horse who beats a field, going 2 turns on the turf by 5 1/4 lengths.
Sure.
You have to respect that.
Yes.
So, she is deserving. The buyer number I have here is a 77, which matches up very well. So, she's definitely a play. And if Pacific Heat does take some more money and, we can get her to float up to 8-1, that's a great play for late in the tournament.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all, and I like where your head's at. I just went back to my notes, a 94 Timeform U.S. speed figure going long for the first time. I just think that I'm on the right horse here. I think the sky's the limit for the one. So we're going to head to Florida now. Hollandale Beach, Gulfstream Park, race 9. It's a $46,000 allowance optional claimer, Andrew. It's 1 mile on the turf, 4-year-olds and up. It's a field of 12. And Conquest Typhoon, the 6-horse, is your 3-1 morning line favorite. If there is ever a beatable favorite in the dictionary, it needs to be a picture of Conquest Typhoon beside beatable favorite, because this horse takes a lot of money on a consistent basis, and this horse has trouble getting its picture taken.
Yeah, and, a lot of money always comes in on the Conquest stable horses, especially when trained by Mark Cassidy, just because you have such a high percentage trainer going out on the turf. And Jose Lezcano is also one of the best turf jockeys down there right now as well. So you got to respect it. But honestly, like you said, I think he's a very beatable favorite today. The horse I chose was actually right to the outside of him, number 7, My Point Exactly, going off at 12-1.
I get it.
So the way I kind of looked at it is, if you throw his last 2 starts where he chased a real hot pace, and those days were speed biased all over the turf, but still came back with some very, very good buyers that can fit here, 87, and then going back one, you have a 90 Andrew Beyer speed figure. But this horse, 2 wins over the course, win in the 3rd place over the distance, gets a big jockey upgrade in Jaramillo today. And if you look at the last race, finishes 5.5 lengths behind Grand Tito, who then goes on to win the McDermott at Gulfstream. And
very impressively, by the way, Andrew. That was a very impressive effort by Grand Tito. So the company
that's 104, and that's just nuts. So hopefully she's flattered there, and she gets a perfect trip sitting off the pace, and we could roll. I honestly don't think we'll get 12-1 though. But if I'm getting 12-1 on this horse, I don't see how you don't take a contest.
Yeah, I get it. Major player, took a long look at the 7. I got this being a very contested pace early, with my Cowboy, the 2-horse, being the speed of the speed. If you go back to that last race by the 2-horse, did an incredible job of maintaining its speed as long as it did. Now, I know the numbers at Tampa don't necessarily translate as well to other places, but nevertheless, my point is, extremely fast horse. The reason I don't think the 2 is as dangerous from a tournament perspective is because there are horses in this race stretching out. I've already given you my spiel about horses stretching out. I think the 2's going to have company. The race really did not take that long for me to read. I unfortunately landed on the 10-horse Arapica 7-2 morning line. It was pretty cut and dry for me. If this horse runs the same race it did last time out from a numbers perspective, how I calculate things, from a 287-day layoff, this horse wins. And the book says horses improve. Second off the layoff, third off the layoff. Doesn't even have to improve, but will. I think the horse sets behind. The horse is stretching out, and the 2 probably in that 4th to 5th range. Paco Lopez is aggressive from the bell. We know this. And the horse has enough tactical speed to get into position going into the first turn to where it needs to be and turning for home. In all honesty, I don't think this race is close. I think the 10, off that last effort, will improve and win this race going away. Now, the concern, obviously, is the post and the fact that this racetrack, this turf course, has been benefiting speed the last few weeks because it has not rained, and it's gotten back to the normal Gulfstream Park weather that we're accustomed to. But I just think the 10 is much the horse to beat. And, you know, Andrew, at the end of the day, and we do live in a what have you done for me lately society, the 6 is just taking so much money. Is there going to come to a point where Conquest Typhoon just stops getting bet? Because I'm afraid, to me, 7-2, $9 on that horse's last effort on the 10, that's a steal. Is there any way you see the 10 horse going off the favorite, or maybe 3-1, the same odds as Conquest Typhoon? Because people have to get sick and tired of betting on this horse and continuously not cashing tickets.
I mean, definitely, and it's going to come to a day where Conquest Typhoon does, stop being bet. I hope it's not today.
Hope it's not today.
Get some better prices on our horses,
right?
But Arapica, honestly, I think he sits at that 7-2, 3-1 range. I don't think he'll go off as low as 5-2. So, definitely you got to pull the trigger if you can get a 7-2 or even 3-1 at the lowest there. But like you said, profitable angles. You have second off the layoff. I mean, if we look at a lifetime, this horse has only finished outside of the money 3 times.
Incredible. And racing against some salty groups.
Exactly. Loves the distance, loves the turf course. And, Eddie Keneally is an underrated turf jockey. He may not have a lot of wins, but, his horses are always primed and ready to go. So I like your pick, and Arapica was also my top 3rd selection there.
Well, I think from a pari-mutuel standpoint, any exotics, you got to certainly include the 7. I love your play. I know it sounds crazy, but the 2 just has so much speed that you can't not include this horse in any horizontals that you're doing. I don't know what kind of bankroll the viewers have here, but if you can put the 2 in a pick 4 and or maybe that Rainbow 6 that's incredible right now, almost $3 million for maybe you try. The 2 certainly going to go in any trifectas. Going to go in any pick 4 that I have. So I think I'd spread here 2, 7, 10. And then from a tournament perspective, I think the 10 is just the play. But just my fear is everyone else has a strong opinion, as I do on Arapica, and bets this horse. Because I can't see how this horse is not the favorite after that last effort, when we know the odds makers typically put odds in races based on your last effort. And that last effort is by far the best effort in this field.
Exactly. And, just to close in on your point on My Cowboy, Brian Lynch is a very, very, very good turf trainer, and he has to be respected. And plus the horse cutting back, going back from 9 furlongs to 8 furlongs here, that's only going to help him with the speed. And he is going to be a major player in this race if he's alone on the front end.
Yeah, that would be scary.
Like we said, he may not have the speed that can travel the full distance, sure. But at 20-1, that is a huge play underneath in anybody's exotics and worth a play in horizontals.
I completely agree. It's good to see we're on the same base there. So Andrew's on the 7, I'm on the 10. We're going to move to Tampa Bay. Very good Tampa Bay Derby card as a whole. They certainly put together a good card. I know it can be difficult to get horses to ship there sometimes, but they've certainly brought the talent to Tampa Bay on Saturday. We're going to move to race 8 at Tampa Bay. It's the Grade 3 Florida Oaks, which I thought was the most competitive race, Andrew, of all the races that we're going to cover tonight on Tournament Talk. It's 1 mile and 1/16 on the turf for 3-year-old fillies. It's a field of 14. And you want to talk about another perplexing favorite. I understand to a certain extent why Conquest Typhoon is your 3-1 morning line favorite. Like I said, he doesn't win, but he runs numbers that are comparable. He's got the connections. He's always got big-time jockeys on him. But the 6 horse in this race, Family Meeting, is your 3-1 morning line favorite. And I wouldn't even think this horse would be third choice in this race. Your thoughts on the 6 at 3-1, and do you think this horse will end up going off the favorite?
No, and I'm with you, Bobby. I always do my handicapping a night before, and I kind of try to make my own odds. And honestly, looking at what I have here, I have this horse at 10-1.
Right.
He has some respectable races, but it's not a 3-1. I just don't see it. Focusing in on his maiden race over the Laurel Turf Course, a very soft course that day. Comes from last place, wins the race, and evenly bet he was 3-1 that day. But my thing is with maidens on a soft turf course, you always have to watch what they do next. You don't know if these are babies we're talking about, so you just don't know if they just liked it that one day. It doesn't mean they're going to like it the next time.
Sure.
And you don't know what they're going to do the next time. So the Jimmy Durante, he goes off 37-1, comes out of the clouds and wins, and yeah, that's impressive, but I think he was just flattered by such a hot pace, and he absolutely freaked that afternoon. And I mean, he came back as an odds-on beaten favorite, lost by 7 lengths, and
there you go.
Sitting back at 3-1 today, I just don't see it. And in a 14-horse, 3-year-old filly, two-turn turf race, I'm playing against that, absolutely.
And with Andrew, with connections like Todd Pletcher in this race and Chad Brown in this race and other trainers that have won a lot of money on the turf, I just very perplexed. One of the most perplexing morning lines that I've ever seen since doing this show. So clearly we're throwing Family Meeting out. And I'm going to tell you right now, not on pick 3s, not on pick 4s, not in any tries. I just don't think this horse... Really, I don't give this horse a shot to win this race. So, Family Meeting's out. Who do you like in this race and why? And before you give me that, from a pace perspective, how is this going to play out?
From a pace perspective, like I said, it's weird to see who's going to go out here. It doesn't look like there's one true horse that wants to go and get the lead here.
Right.
For my horse, and we'll get into that, but what's going to be the best thing for my horse to win this race is I'm hoping that these outside long shots like Valuable Charmer at 30-1, the 12 horse, I'm hoping him and the horse to the outside of him just go to the lead. They set an insane pace. They can't hold it at all. And then the cavalry comes at the top of the stretch, and I'm hoping my horse is in the perfect path.
Right.
And my horse is number 7, Spinamus, from the Todd Pletcher barn.
Right.
And first things first, Todd Pletcher doesn't ship the Tampa Bay Downs unless he absolutely has to.
Right.
He's 6 for 11. The record just speaks for itself, but Spinamus won a solid $75,000 optional claim over this turf course on December 20th. And if you look at that was the first time North American start for Todd Pletcher. And he doesn't really have success with first-time Euro imports, especially on the turf.
No.
So looking at that, very excited to see what she would do in her next start. And she finishes second in the Swedish Chant at grade 3 over there at Gulfstream, I'm sorry. Finishes second to Price to Perfection, who is a full sister to Miss Temple City, a multiple graded stakes filly. But number 7, Spinamus, stretches out an extra 16th of a mile and should be in a prime position late under the best turf jockey there is, Javier Castellano. And the connections are, how could you overlook them? 6-1 on Javier Castellano and Todd Pletcher. And that's the thing, Bobby. I want to ask you, do you think I get 6-1 on this horse?
Not a chance. I mean, this horse is going to go off the favorite. And because of everything you just said. Look, Todd Pletcher and Javier Castellano are going to get bet whether that horse deserves to be bet or not. And this horse deserves to be bet because this horse ought to be the morning line favorite. And I think eventually this horse is going to go off the favorite. And I think, unfortunately for you, 3-1 is probably what you're going to get on this horse.
Yeah. And that's actually, like I said, I'm sorry to cut you off. Like I said, when I do my odds the night before they come out, that's what I had her. I had her as the 3-1 favorite.
Yeah, and that's what she should be, and that's what she's going to end up going off at. I think this is a very weak graded stakes race. Didn't have a strong opinion, and if you've watched the show in the past, my methodology when it comes to races in which I don't have a strong opinion in a field as large as this take a shot. And I landed on a horse that, on its face, looks outclassed. On its face, the post position kills the horse. But how I calculate these things on the turf and how I became very profitable on the turf since June of last year was looking at the math, looking at what the numbers tell me to do, and let the rest be window dressing and move on. And if you go to the 14 horse, Princess, at 10-1 morning line, go back to October 8th, Andrew, and see where this horse broke its maiden, first time on the turf, on a firm turf course. So this is at 21-1, wins a race by a head. Immediately shipped to Tampa on January 20th and runs her best race yet. Didn't win the race, but run a 100 time form U.S. speed figure, 104 days off the layoff, and loses by a length and a quarter. For whatever reason, the connection shipped this horse to Turfway Park and put her on the synthetic where she did not like it. She ran 10 points slower. Okay?
Exactly.
Was an afterthought. Went off the 1-1 favorite, understandably so. Didn't like the scent. Look, she's back where she belongs today. She's got Daniel Centeno on her, who is a magician at Tampa Bay Downs.
Exactly.
Look, the two turf races, from a numbers perspective, make her a player. I think I'm going to get an overlay because of Chad Brown on the 4 horse getting overbet with Avila's Kitten, who, to me, in my additions, as far as math is concerned, doesn't add up. The 7 horses numbers trounce the 4. So I think 15-1 on this horse, maybe higher, is what I'm going to get. Am I going to go to the window? No. Is this a tournament horse that could win me a tournament or put me in position to win a tournament? Yes. So I'm going to roll with the 14 horse, Princess, 10-1 morning line, a clearly outclassed, but when you're looking at a race in which you don't have a lot of confidence in and you don't think there's a lot of talent in here when you see grade 3, I just took a shot. But your horse is much the horse to be.
Exactly. But, Bobby, I'm actually glad you brought up Princess, because I looked into her a lot. Immediately I threw out that synthetic race at Turfway Park. There was no need to ship there. And the only time she's finished out of the money was her first start, which, okay, maiden at Ellis Park, whatever. But it looks like on paper, she's been working lights out. And like you said, Daniel Centeno was just a magician. And, for young fillies going out on the turf, like I said, I look for speed. The only reason I didn't have this horse as close to my top pick was the post draw. And I know sometimes I like my speed horse to drawn out, but 14 is just such a tough post.
It is.
But if Centeno can, get her settled and get her there, and they go into the first turn and she's in front, there's a huge chance there.
So we both agree, talent perspective, as good as any in this field. It just depends on the post. So I'm glad that we agree on throwing the class out because we both think she's good enough. It just depends on the post. I almost went another direction to your 7, but I wanted to be different, if you will, and I just took a shot on a horse that could really do me some good in a tournament. Before we move on, we can't not talk about Chad Brown on the 4 horse, Avila's Kitten. 133-day layoff, hasn't run since Halloween, won its last race. In fact, she's won her last 2 races. I don't know if it was the good turf course she didn't necessarily like. Now, I know she won, but the numbers are not there. And this horse is 7-2 because of Chad Brown and Irad Ortiz. They're probably going to be millionaires over just because of them together and how many races they win all the time. I get all that. But if you put Santana on this horse and put another trainer on this horse, no way this horse is 7-2, right? Or do you think this horse is a major player?
100%. When people see, Irad coming down from New York on Saturdays, to ride here for Chad Brown shipping from Gulfstream to Tampa Bay, that's why he gets 7-2. And honestly, at post time, you're more likely to get 2-1, 5-2 on this one.
Yeah, that's a horse that's way over bet. And again, the 7 comes from similar company, similar group, and much better numbers. And something else before we move on to the key race of the day. Todd Pletcher had a quote-unquote weakness before coming into 2016, and that was the turf. Yeah. That has not been the case this year. He's winning, sprinting on the lawn, going long on the lawn, going dirt to turf. He's done it all. And now that he's mastered that, he's just truly turned into I would say, a very good turf trainer at this point, if he wasn't already good anyway. But he's even better now.
Yeah, and to even have you back on that comment, last Saturday at Goshen, he had a first timer going out on the turf. I believe it was like the 8th or the 9th race, making a special weight going along. They let the horse go off at 5-1 and just cruised by 3 lengths. And like you said, Todd Pletcher, especially when you come to the New York scene, you look at the 2 trainers. Chad Brown's the turf guy, Todd Pletcher's the dirt guy.
Right.
And honestly, if Pletcher rolls into the Saratoga meet like he is now, it's going to be a huge race for the turf title, at least.
Sure, I agree. That's a great point, and that's something that you just go into that meet thinking it's going to belong to Chad Brown. And look, it's going to be very exciting this entire year to see what I feel like is the 2 best trainers in the country battling it out at Belmont Park and then in Saratoga. So let's move on to the race of the day. It's Tampa Bay Race 11. It's another Derby prep. It's the Grade 2 Tampa Bay Derby, Andrew. It's a mile and a 16th, obviously on the dirt, obviously for 3-year-olds. A field of 10 and another very vulnerable favorite, in my opinion, Brody's Cause, the 8-horse, 5-2 morning line favorite. He probably will benefit from a very hot pace, but do you think he's good enough to win the race?
Honestly, no. Looking at, like you just said, his best races have come when a hot pace is in front of him. And I honestly don't think he's going to get a perfect setup today. Is he good enough to finish, in the money because he does have that late charge? Yes. But to win the race, I just think he's facing much better horses today. Seeing the other horses he's raced against, Conquest Big E, didn't really show me much last in the Gotham at Aqueduct. Exaggerator, we'll see what's going across the country. And the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, that's a Breeders' Cup race, and you can't really say what's going to come out of that. So I'm not really focusing that much. Focusing on the 2 wins prior to that, both hot paces, and I just don't like the layoff either. I honestly, coming in on, 4 months, I just don't see it today, and at 5-2, it definitely play against.
Okay, I think this horse is absolutely a play against. I watched the replay of the Breeders' Cup race and specifically honed in on him because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss something. And he just looked like, to me, he passed tired rivals. I mean, for lack of a better word, it just looked like the race fell into his lap to finish third. I thought it was a deceiving third, and what I mean is it was not a positive deceiving third. It was a negative deceiving third, if you know what I'm saying. Just fell into third place. So I got a feeling that you and I are going to read this race the same. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and guess what you're picking, but go ahead and give me your top selection.
Well, looking at this, I looked immediately for speed. And, the 1 has some speed, the 3 has speed, the 6 has speed, and even Awesome Banner's a really good speed horse. But I'm looking for the horse that can go 1 mile and 16th, and his speed can take him all the way. And I think there's only 1 horse in this field that can do that, and that's number 6, Riker, from Mark Cassidy and Florent Giroux. Coming out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, the same race like Brody's Cause, I mean, he was up there. He led in the front race, but Nyquist was just better, and that's okay because Nyquist went on to win 2 graded stakes races since, so that's perfectly fine. Before that, he's undefeated. He's running on synthetic at Woodbine, but honestly, what's been happening so far, especially with Cassie's horses that he ships down from Canada, they translate very well synthetic to dirt. So I'm not too concerned about the fact that he really hasn't raced on a dirt other than, the Breeders' Cup race.
Right.
And, honestly, Cassie's one of the hottest in the country right now. He's been working lights out at Palm Meadows for his return. And I just think he's ready to go. I think he's the only horse that can go the distance with this speed.
I was wrong. I thought you were going to take the Pletcher-Castellano connection in Destin. I thought, look, the horse ran well last time. I'm not going to take anything away from Destin. I do think he benefited from a perfect trip, and I watched that race coming down the stretch, and it just does not look like a horse that I want to back, especially want to back at 9-2, Andrew. I can't back that horse, and we know that he's going to be bet down below 9-2. Surprisingly, I landed on the same horse as you. I'm on Riker as well. Here's what I had here. First dirt race of his career was the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. versus Swipe, who you didn't mention, who has finished second to Nyquist each and every time they face each other. And I'll tell you right now, I like Swipe long term more than I do Nyquist. I like his gallop out better. I like his pedigree better. And he was beating both of those horses to the 16th pole and went fast fractions, facing what is, without question, the toughest group he had faced up until that point.
Without a doubt.
Jesse Campbell was on that day. Now he gets a jockey upgrade to, as you mentioned, Florian Giroux, who's turned into my favorite jockey, one of the most underrated jockeys in the United States, turf or dirt. Here's what I think he'll be able to do. I think he'll be able to rate today. I think this horse has shown the ability or enough talent to where he can rate. If Giroux can get him to rate like I think he'll be able to, I think he'll get first run on the rest of the field, on the closers, on Destin, on Brody's Cause, and just be able to show how much talent he really does have down the lane. The 10's going to the lead. The 1's going to the lead. I think the 3's going to the lead. So there's a lot of other speed in here. Now, we're going to be up against it if Riker is a one-run horse. If he just goes straight to the lead, I don't think we're going to win because I think it'll be too hot. But if he can get him to settle just in that second pack, get run on the closers as I just mentioned, I think this horse is going to win. And I think this horse is going to pay a nice price. And if he can prove to rate, Andrew, we could be looking at a horse that could be a player in a Kentucky Derby that I feel like is wide open.
Yeah, and, going into your Kentucky Derby stance, completely wide open, and I think this race itself can prove it because this race, like I say, if we toss Brody's Cause, this is a great prep for Kentucky Derby. So, we're going to see another name that's not Nyquist or Mohamed this weekend because you have to respect whoever's going to come out of this race. Yeah. Going back to Riker, I love your opinion, hoping that he could rate, and I also think that will also be successful now that I'm looking a little bit more at my notes here. Awesome Banner is very, very quick.
Fastest horse in the country, in my opinion. I really believe that, going long.
And you and I were on him in the Fountain of Youth, but, how much can you take out of that, when you see Mohamed in the running lines? Yes, beaten by 26 lengths, but, Mohamed was capable of doing that. We know that. So, in Awesome Banner's case, does find a softer field, but he's got to prove it to me that doesn't speak.
And he's very dangerous, Andrew. I mean, Awesome Banner is a very dangerous horse. I'm completely throwing out that race because I not only think he just didn't run well that day, I think the 26 lengths probably wouldn't have been 26. He's wrapped up, And look, they wouldn't wheel this horse back and ship him 14 days later if they didn't think this horse had a chance to win. I'm not throwing Awesome Banner off of any two-turn races. I don't think this horse can get a mile and a quarter, obviously, but I do think this horse is very dangerous in this race. Yeah. I do think that you should include this horse in pick fours. And look, we know this. If there are big race days at tracks across the country, for whatever reason, there tends to be horses that can carry their speed and go a long way. We saw it at Aqueduct last week. If you don't think there was a golden rail, you weren't watching. And we've seen this at Santa Anita on big days. We see it at other places where these track guys try to get fancy, and all of a sudden horses don't want to pass each other. If that's the case, I think you need to be on the 10 because the horse is good enough to win. And I think if you scratch out the last race and you look at the other running lines, this horse is a major player.
Without a doubt. And like I said, you and I were both on him on the Fountain of Youth. And like you said, 26 lengths. It may have not really been 26 lengths, having been pulled up there. And gets a new jockey today, and that's the leading jockey at Tampa Bay. So I definitely think we're going to see, a new horse today. Yeah. That's going to go that distance. Because why do you want to throw out a horse? He was beaten by Mohamed. Mohamen's going to be your Kentucky Derby favorite. So worth giving another chance. That was my second choice. And
mine as well.
Yeah. From a horizontal perspective, Bobby, you got to think you have Tepin in this pick 5 and pick 4 sequence, no matter how you want to play it. So, that's my single. I'm sure that's 90% of other people's singles. So it's okay to go deep here. And in this race, you want a price. And with Brody's Cause being out of this, go out there and get it. 8-1 on Awesome Banner. If he can go up 10-1, that's a $22 horse, and that's going to make Tepin a little bit easier, on a single. Yeah. So definitely not a throwout.
Yeah, I agree. So you're on the 6 Riker. I'm on the 6 Riker. If this horse can rate, this horse is going to win and is going to be a major player on the Kentucky Derby Trail. So that's going to do it for this week's edition of Tournament Talk on the Tournament Edge. Andrew, it's been a pleasure having you, and we'll do it again next week. So for all those, until next time, good luck.